when a world-famous pianist tried to embarrass a quiet cleaning lady. He had no idea she would make the entire concert hall cry. In a beautiful concert hall filled with golden lights and shiny marble floors, rich guests in fancy clothes laughed and chatted before the concert began. Waiters moved quietly, holding glasses of wine and water. This place wasn't just for music. It was where stars were born. David Sinclair, age 52, stood near the stage. He was a famous pianist with gray hair and a perfect black suit. Everyone respected him. Tonight, he would play difficult songs by Chopin, and everyone expected another perfect performance. "Mr. Sinclair, everything is ready for your show," came a soft voice behind him. He turned and saw a young black woman wearing a cream sweater and a gray skirt. Her hair was tied back simply. Her name tag said Zaria. She worked at the hall. She looked about 30, and her hands were rough from cleaning every day. "Thank you," David said quickly, barely looking at her. To him, she was just part of the staff, unimportant. Zaria walked through the hall, filling water glasses and handing out programs. She had worked here for 3 years. Every morning, she came early to clean the stage, dust the piano, and get the space ready for magic. She loved music more than anything, even if no one noticed her. Sometimes, when no one was around, she would softly touch the piano keys and imagine what it would feel like to really play. She never told anyone that she used to dream of being a pianist too. As David warmed up, he noticed Zaria again. She was gently wiping a smudge off the piano, like it was something sacred. "Careful," he said with a little laugh. "That piano costs more than most people's houses." Zaria looked up, a bit startled. "Yes, sir. I know it's very valuable." "I'm sure you do," he said, then turned away to speak with his fans. The crowd took their seats. Excitement filled the air. David walked on stage. The lights dimmed. He sat at the piano and began to play Chopin's Ballad No. 1. The music poured out like gold. Each note was perfect. The audience was silent, lost in the beauty. From the back of the hall, Zaria listened with her eyes closed. She knew this piece. She knew every note, every rise and fall. It told a story of love, pain, and dreams. Her fingers moved in the air. She had listened to this song hundreds of times at the library. Music was her escape. "That was perfect," whispered Mrs. Lawson, a rich donor in the front row. "David is the best. No one plays Chopin like he does." David stood and bowed. The crowd clapped loudly. "For my next piece," he said, "I will play Chopin's Etude Opus 10 No. 4. Zaria held her breath. This was one of the hardest piano pieces in the world. Fast, emotional, wild. She had dreamed of playing it one day. David's fingers flew over the keys. His playing was fast and powerful. Then he saw her again. Zaria was still standing there in the back. Her face looked deeply connected to the music. That bothered him. She was just a cleaner. She didn't belong in this world. He wanted to put her in her place. After the applause, David stayed at the piano with a small smirk. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said loudly, "I see someone in the back who really seems to enjoy the music." He pointed towards Zaria. Her eyes widened. People turned to look. Her cheeks burned. "You there, in the gray skirt," he said. "Do you play piano?" "A little," she answered softly. "A little," he laughed. "Well, maybe you'd like to show us." The crowd chuckled. They knew what was happening. He was making fun of her. "Oh no, I'm just staff," she said. "Music is for everyone," David said loudly. "Come now, show us what you've learned." She was trapped. If she said no, she'd seem rude. If she said yes, she might embarrass herself. Then she remembered something her grandmother once told her. "When your moment comes, don't hide. Show the world what you carry inside." Zaria took a deep breath and walked toward the piano. "Wonderful," David said. "Maybe play something simple, Twinkle Twinkle." People laughed again. Zaria stood beside the piano, touching its smooth surface. Then she said clearly, "I'd like to play Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor." The room fell silent. David blinked. "That's a very difficult piece," he said. I know, Zaria said, and sat down. David stepped aside, still expecting her to fail. Zaria closed her eyes and began to play. The first note rang out, strong, clear, full of feeling. The room froze. David's smile faded. This was no beginner. Her fingers danced with grace and strength. Every phrase was full of meaning. The crowd leaned forward. She wasn't playing notes. She was telling a story. Her story. The hard middle part came, and Zaria's fingers moved faster than anyone expected. But her face stayed calm. Her heart led the music. Tears fell down her cheeks, but her hands never stopped. She had waited years for this. David stood still, his eyes wide. This woman, the one he tried to embarrass, was now giving the most powerful performance of the night. When she reached the final notes, her fingers floated over the keys like feathers. Then, silence. The room was completely still. You could hear a pin drop. Then, Mrs. Lawson stood up and began to clap. Slow, strong, proud. Everyone followed. The sound of the applause shook the walls. David walked slowly to the piano. His voice shook. How long have you played? Since I was 7, Zaria said. My father was a pianist. He taught me, but we couldn't afford lessons forever. David looked down. His pride melted away. I was wrong, he said quietly. I tried to shame you, but you showed me something beautiful. I'm sorry. Zaria stood, smiling gently. You don't need to be sorry. Music doesn't belong to the rich. It belongs to anyone who feels it. He nodded. Would you finish the concert for us? She hesitated. Please, he said, his voice now full of respect. They need to hear more. Yes, please, Mrs. Lawson called. Others shouted too. Zaria looked out at the crowd. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen. She nodded. Just one more piece. She sat again and began to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Soft, warm, like a quiet voice in the dark. In the crowd, people began to reflect. Mrs. Lawson thought about her housekeeper. Did she have dreams too? A businessman remembered the guitar he once loved. A woman who once judged others by their job titles wiped her eyes. David listened, deeply moved. She reminded him of why he started music before the fame changed him. When the music ended, he stood beside her. Tonight, you saw something rare, he told the crowd. A true artist, not from a rich school, but from the heart. 6 months later, the same concert hall was full again, but this time, the name on the program said, Zaria Brooks, piano recital. Outside, her face was on posters. Inside, the same crowd waited, not for a show, but to feel something real again. David now stood beside her, not as the star, but as her page-turner. Nervous? He asked. Yes, she smiled, but ready. You changed me, you know, he said. That night, you reminded me what music really means. As Zaria sat at the piano, she thought of her father, her grandmother, and her own journey. This time, she played not to prove herself, but to celebrate second chances. And as the final notes filled the room, everyone knew, the most beautiful music doesn't come from perfect places. It comes from true hearts, even those the world forgets to see. Did Zaria's story touch your heart? Have you ever met someone with a hidden gift? Share your story in the comments. If this inspired you, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. More powerful stories are coming. And remember, sometimes the person you overlook might carry the most beautiful music of all.